May 1940. A German patrol creeps through the morning mist near the small French village of L'Épinette. The soldiers move carefully, rifles at the ready. They have no idea that a British officer is watching them from a stone wall, but this officer is not holding a rifle. He is holding a 6-foot English longbow. The arrow fitted to his bowstring is long, straight, and tipped with a barbed point. In one fluid motion, the officer draws the bow and releases. The string thrums heavily. The arrow crosses 30 yards in an instant and strikes the leading German sergeant through the chest. The man falls. His comrades dive for cover, stunned and confused. They have just witnessed something that had not happened in European warfare for nearly 3 centuries. A man killed by a longbow in battle. The British officer was Captain John Malcolm Thorpe Fleming Churchill. His friends called him Jack. History would call him Mad Jack, and this was only the beginning of his extraordinary war. Over the next 5 years, this one man would escape capture twice, lead commando raids across Europe, take 42 German prisoners with nothing but a sword, survive a concentration camp, and walk over 100 miles to freedom through enemy territory. His weapons of choice remained the same throughout: a Scottish broadsword, a longbow, and a set of bagpipes. If you find stories like this incredible, you are in the right place. Take a moment now to subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. That way, you will not miss any of our deep dives into the most extraordinary moments in military history. Jack Churchill was born on the 16th of September 1906 in Colombo, British Ceylon. His father, Alec Fleming Churchill, served as a district engineer in the Ceylon Civil Service, a position of considerable prestige in the colonial administration. His mother, Eleanor Elizabeth, came from Irish stock with roots in County Kevin. The family had been settled in Oxfordshire for generations, but the demands of empire had scattered them across the globe. When Jack was still an infant, the family returned to England, settling in Dormansland, Surrey. His younger brother Thomas was born the following year. Then, in 1910, the Churchills moved again, this time to Hong Kong, where Alec Churchill took up the post of Director of Public Works. A third son, Robert, was born there in 1911. The boys grew up in the twilight years of the British Empire, surrounded by the confident certainty that the world belonged to men like their father. Jack was educated at King William's College on the Isle of Man, a boarding school with a strong military tradition. The institution shaped young men for service to the Crown, instilling discipline, physical fitness, and a sense of duty. Jack excelled, and in 1926, he graduated from the Royal Military College at Sandhurst, the training ground for British Army officers. He was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Manchester Regiment. His first posting sent him halfway around the world to Burma. The regiment was stationed in Rangoon, and Jack was dispatched to Pune, India, for a signals course. Getting there required crossing 1,500 miles of the Indian subcontinent. Jack made the journey on a Zenith motorcycle. He crashed into a water buffalo along the way, but he kept going. In Burma, he found creative solutions to difficult terrain. When he needed to cross railway bridges with open sleepers, he would step onto the sleepers and push his motorcycle along the rails. It was also in Burma that Jack discovered his passion for bagpipes. He took lessons from the pipe major of the Cameron Highlanders, learning the instrument that would become as much a part of his identity as his sword. He was awarded the Indian General Service Medal with Burma clasp for his service there, the first of many decorations he would earn. But by the mid-1930s, Army life in peacetime had lost its appeal. Jack found the routine dull, the postings tedious. In 1936, he resigned his commission and set off to find adventure elsewhere. He moved to Nairobi, Kenya, where he worked as a newspaper editor. He also tried his hand at male modeling, his tall frame and striking features making him suitable for the work. but his true passions lay elsewhere. Jack was an exceptional archer. His skill with the longbow was not a mere hobby, but a serious discipline. He could put an arrow through a target at 200 yards with remarkable accuracy. This talent led him into film. He appeared in the 1940 production of The Thief of Baghdad, where his archery skills were put on display. He also had a small role in A Yank at Oxford. These were not leading parts, but they paid the bills and allowed him to pursue his craft. In 1938, he took second place in the military piping competition at the Aldershot Tattoo, competing against the finest pipers in the British Army. The following year, he represented Great Britain at the World Archery Championships in Oslo, Norway, finishing 26th. He was 32 years old, an eccentric former officer with unusual talents and no particular direction. Then Nazi Germany invaded Poland. Everything changed on the 1st of September 1939. Jack Churchill had remained on the reserve officer list, and when war was declared, he was recalled to active duty. He rejoined the Manchester Regiment, which was being prepared for deployment to France as part of the British Expeditionary Force. Jack packed his kit with the usual items: uniform, ammunition, personal effects, but he also packed a longbow, a quiver of arrows, and a Scottish broadsword with a basket hilt. His superiors were bemused, but they did not stop him. The British Expeditionary Force landed in France and took up positions along the front. The period known as the Phony War stretched through the winter of 1939 and into the spring of 1940. There was little combat, only waiting. Then, in May, the German blitzkrieg struck. The Wehrmacht's armored division smashed through the Ardennes and drove deep into France. The Allied front collapsed. British and French forces were pushed back toward the Channel coast. Jack Churchill and his regiment found themselves caught in the desperate retreat. At L'Épinette, near Bethune, Churchill's company was trapped. German forces were closing in from multiple directions. The situation looked hopeless, but Jack had other plans. When the German patrol approached, he signaled his 2 infantrymen to ready their Bren guns and rifles. Then he took out his longbow. He watched the lead German come around a bend. He fitted an arrow. He drew. He released. The arrow struck the sergeant through the chest, and the man dropped. Before the rest of the patrol could react, Churchill's men opened fire. The surprise was total. The patrol was scattered. This was guerrilla warfare, the kind of fighting Jack Churchill understood instinctively. He continued to stage ambushes and raids, using the confusion of the retreat to strike at German forces when they least expected it. When conventional weapons ran out, he improvised. At one point, his company was trapped again, their ammunition depleted. Churchill used 2 machine guns until they were empty, then led the survivors through enemy lines under cover of darkness. He was shot in the shoulder during the escape, but he kept moving. He got his men to safety. The evacuation at Dunkirk was chaos. Hundreds of thousands of British and French soldiers crowded the beaches, waiting for rescue while German aircraft strafed and bombed them. Jack Churchill made it off the beaches and back to England. His war had only just begun. Back in Britain, Churchill volunteered for the commandos. This was a new kind of unit, formed at the personal direction of Winston Churchill, who wanted elite raiders capable of striking the enemy where they were most vulnerable. The commandos attracted adventurers, risk-takers, and men who chafed at conventional military discipline. Jack Churchill was a natural fit. He was assigned to No. 3 Commando and quickly rose to second in command. The unit trained relentlessly, preparing for operations that would take them across occupied Europe. Jack continued to carry his sword and bagpipes. His fellow commandos learned not to question his eccentricities. The man delivered results. The first major commando operation came on the 27th of December, 1941. Operation Archery was a raid on the German garrison at Vågsøy, a strategically important island on the Norwegian coast. The Germans had fortified the position, and the garrison was well armed. The commandos' mission was to destroy the fortifications, eliminate the garrison, and demolish the fish oil factories that produced glycerin for German munitions. The assault force approached the island in landing craft. Jack Churchill stood at the front of the lead boat, his bagpipes under his arm. As the ramps dropped, he began to play. The tune was the March of the Cameron Men, a Highland war song that had sent Scottish soldiers into battle for generations. The sound of the pipes echoed across the freezing water as the commandos poured onto the beach. Churchill did not wait for his men to form up. He played the last notes of the march, then set down his pipes, drew a grenade, and hurled it at the nearest German position. Then he charged, his broadsword flashing in the cold morning light. The rest of the commandos followed. The battle was fierce but brief. The Germans were overwhelmed by the speed and violence of the assault. Within 10 minutes, the garrison was overrun. Those who were not killed were taken prisoner. The commandos demolished the fish oil factories, destroyed German installations, and withdrew with prisoners and intelligence. The raid was a complete success. Film footage of the operation shows Jack Churchill on the deck of a ship during the return voyage, playing his bagpipes while his fellow commandos dance a Highland fling. He was awarded the Military Cross for his actions at Vaugsoy and for his earlier exploits in France. The citation praised his bravery and initiative. His reputation was established. If you are enjoying this story, take a moment to hit the like button. It helps more people discover incredible history like this. Now, let us continue. By July of 1943, Jack Churchill was a commanding officer. He led No. 2 Commando, one of the most capable units in the British Army. The war had shifted to the Mediterranean, and the Allies were preparing to invade Italy. The first target was Sicily. Churchill landed at Catania with his trademark Scottish broadsword slung around his waist. His longbow and arrows hung around his neck. His bagpipes were under his arm. Some officers might have considered this absurd. Jack Churchill considered it essential. As he famously stated, any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed. The fighting in Sicily was hard, but the commandos performed brilliantly. They moved fast, hit hard, and withdrew before the enemy could respond. Churchill led from the front, as he always did. When the island was secured, the next objective was the Italian mainland. The landings at Salerno in September of 1943 were among the bloodiest of the Italian campaign. German forces counterattacked fiercely, and for several days the outcome was uncertain. Churchill and his commandos defended a critical road and rail junction at Vietri sul Mare for 5 straight days, holding off determined German assaults until American armored vehicles arrived to relieve them. But Churchill was not content with defense. He studied the terrain and identified a German observation post outside the town of Molina. The post overlooked a vital pass leading down to the Salerno beachhead. As long as the Germans held it, they could call down artillery on Allied positions with deadly accuracy. Churchill decided to take it. He did not bring a company. He did not bring a platoon. He brought 1 corporal. The 2 men moved through the darkness, navigating German positions by sound and shadow. They found an 81mm mortar crew first. Churchill approached with his broadsword drawn. In the confusion of the night, the Germans could not tell how many attackers they faced. Churchill ordered them to surrender. They did. From there, Churchill and the corporal moved from position to position. Each time, the procedure was the same. Churchill would appear out of the darkness, sword in hand, and demand surrender. The Germans, unable to see how few attackers there were, complied. By the time the 2 men returned to British lines, they had taken 42 prisoners, including the entire mortar crew with all their weapons. Churchill led the captured soldiers and the wounded back down the pass, using carts pushed by the German prisoners themselves. He later remarked that the scene reminded him of the Napoleonic Wars. For this action, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Order. He had been recommended for the Victoria Cross, Britain's highest military honor, but the DSO was the decoration he received. He would earn a second one before the war was over. There is one more detail about that night in Molina. In the fighting, Churchill lost his sword. The following day, he walked back into the town alone to retrieve it. On the way, he encountered an American patrol that was inadvertently heading toward German lines. When the NCO in charge refused to turn around, Churchill told them he was going his own way. He was not going back for a bloody third time. By 1944, the war had entered a new phase. The Allies were pushing into Italy, and special operations were intensifying across occupied Europe. Jack Churchill was assigned to McLean Mission, a British effort to support Josip Broz Tito's partisans in Yugoslavia. Churchill led commando operations from the Adriatic island of Vis. The missions were dangerous and complex, requiring coordination with irregular forces whose discipline and reliability varied enormously. But Jack thrived in this environment. The chaos suited him. In May of 1944, Churchill was ordered to raid the German-held island of Brač. He assembled a force of 1,500, a mixed group of Yugoslav partisans, No. 43 Commando, and a troop from No. 40 Commando. It was, as he later described it, a motley army. The landing was unopposed, but when the commandos advanced inland, they encountered heavily fortified German positions. The gun emplacements were formidable. The partisans, seeing the strength of the defenses, decided to defer the attack until the following day. Churchill was frustrated, but he could not force them to fight. The attack the next morning was launched by No. 43 Commando, with Churchill leading elements from No. 40 Commando. The partisans remained at the landing area. The assault was brutal. Only Churchill and 6 other men managed to reach the objective. Then a German mortar shell landed among them. The explosion killed or wounded everyone except Churchill. He stood alone, surrounded by dead and dying comrades, with German soldiers closing in. He knew he had no chance of escape. His revolver was empty, so he did the only thing that made sense to him. He took out his bagpipes. He began to play Will You Know Come Back Again, a mournful Scottish tune of farewell. The sound of the pipes echoed across the battlefield as the Germans advanced. They must have wondered what kind of madman they were facing. Before they could reach him, a grenade exploded nearby. The blast knocked Churchill unconscious. When he woke, he was a prisoner. The Germans believed Jack Churchill might be related to Winston Churchill. The name suggested a connection to the British Prime Minister, and his rank and evident importance made him a prize captive. German military intelligence had him flown to Berlin for interrogation. Churchill was sent to Sachsenhausen concentration camp, located just north of Berlin. This was not a prisoner of war camp, but a brutal facility where the Nazis held political prisoners, resistance fighters, and others deemed enemies of the Reich. Conditions were harsh, and execution was always a possibility. The infamous Commando Order, issued by Hitler in 1942, mandated that captured commandos be handed over to the SS for execution, rather than treated as prisoners of war. Jack Churchill should have been killed, but a German officer showed mercy. Whether this was due to Churchill's supposed connection to Winston Churchill, or simply because the officer was a decent man, is unclear. Whatever the reason, Jack survived, but he had no intention of remaining a prisoner. In September of 1944, Churchill and an RAF officer found a weakness in the camp's perimeter. There was an abandoned drain that ran under the barbed wire. One night, the 2 men crawled through the drain and emerged outside the camp. They had escaped. Freedom was short-lived. Churchill headed toward the Baltic coast, planning to reach Sweden and then make his way back to Britain. He walked for miles through enemy territory, avoiding German patrols and checkpoints. But he was eventually recaptured, just short of his goal. The Germans transferred him to a more secure location, a camp in Niederdorf, Austria. The Nazis were taking no chances with this particular prisoner, but they underestimated Jack Churchill. In April of 1945, with the war in its final weeks, the camp's lighting system failed one evening. The darkness was complete. Churchill saw his opportunity. He slipped away into the forest and headed toward the Alps. This time, there was no recapture. Churchill walked for over 100 miles through the mountains, navigating by instinct and sheer determination. He crossed the Brenner Pass and made his way into Italy. Eventually, he reached American lines. He was free. While Churchill was escaping, events were unfolding at the camp he had left behind. In late April of 1945, Churchill and about 140 other prominent prisoners had been transferred to Tyrol and placed under SS guard. A delegation of prisoners approached senior German army officers, expressing their fear that the SS intended to execute them. A German army unit commanded by Captain Richard von Alvensleben moved in to protect the prisoners. The regular army soldiers confronted the SS guards. Outnumbered and outgunned, the SS withdrew, leaving the prisoners behind. It was one of the small acts of decency that occurred even in the final chaos of the Nazi regime. Jack Churchill returned to Britain a hero. His exploits had become legendary. Tales of the officer who fought with a longbow and broadsword, who captured 42 Germans with a sword, who escaped a concentration camp twice. But the war was not over. Fighting continued in the Pacific, and Jack was eager to return to action. He qualified as a parachutist and was sent to Burma, where British forces were engaged in fierce combat against the Japanese. But by the time Churchill arrived, the war was over. The atomic bombs had fallen on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and Japan had surrendered. Churchill was reportedly disappointed. According to fellow soldiers, he exclaimed that if it was not for those damn Yanks, they could have kept the war going another 10 years. Whether this was a joke or a genuine expression of frustration is impossible to say. Perhaps it was both. With the World War behind him, Jack Churchill looked for new adventures. He joined the Highland Light Infantry and was posted to British-occupied Palestine, where tensions between Jewish settlers and Arab forces were escalating into open conflict. In 1948, during the Siege of Jerusalem, Churchill coordinated rescue and evacuation efforts at the Hadassah Hospital. He is credited with helping to save the lives of 500 patients and staff. He remained in the Army until retirement, serving with the Seaforth Highlanders and continuing to seek out challenges wherever he could find them. He took up surfing in his 50s, becoming one of the first people to surf the tidal bore on the River Severn in England. He built and sailed small boats on the Thames. He made radio-controlled model warships. He never stopped moving. In civilian life, Jack Churchill was, by all accounts, a different man. His son described him as peaceful and unassuming at home, a far cry from the warrior who had charged German positions with a broadsword. One of his favorite sayings was that people are less likely to shoot you if you are smiling at them. He had a habit that bemused his fellow commuters. On the train home from work, as the train passed his house, he would throw his briefcase out the window, aiming it accurately into his garden. The other passengers had no idea he was doing this deliberately. To them, he was just another eccentric Englishman. Jack Churchill died on the 8th of March, 1996, at the age of 89. He passed away in Surrey, the same county where he had been born. He left behind a legacy that seems almost too incredible to be true. Yet every word of it is documented, confirmed by military records, eyewitness accounts, and the testimony of the men who served beside him. In 2014, the Royal Norwegian Explorers Club published a book featuring Churchill as one of the finest explorers and adventurers of all time. The co-founder of the club called him one of the most inspirational and impressive people they had ever researched. What made Jack Churchill so extraordinary? It was not just his skill with a bow or his courage under fire. It was his absolute refusal to accept limits, The world told him that longbows were obsolete. He shot a German with one anyway. The world told him that concentration camps were inescapable. He escaped. Twice. The world told him that the war was over. He regretted that they could not keep fighting. There is a photograph of Jack Churchill from the Salerno campaign. He is leading his men in an assault exercise, his sword raised high, his face set with determination. In that image, you can see the man entire. He was not fighting for medals or recognition. He was fighting because that was who he was. The combat, the danger, the impossible odds. These were the things that made him feel alive. His story is a reminder that history is made by individuals. The great sweep of nations and armies matters. But so do the choices of single men and women. Jack Churchill chose to fight his war on his own terms. He chose the longbow when everyone else chose the rifle. He chose the sword when everyone else chose the grenade. He chose to play the bagpipes while the enemy closed in, because even in the face of death he would not surrender who he was. There are lessons in his life for anyone who has ever been told that their dreams are impractical, that their methods are outdated, that they should conform to expectations. Jack Churchill proved that sometimes the eccentric path is the right one. Sometimes the man with the bow and sword accomplishes what the man with the rifle cannot. His legacy endures in the commandos he helped to shape, in the traditions of special forces that continue to this day. It endures in the stories told about him, stories that have inspired books, documentaries, and countless retellings. And it endures in the simple, undeniable fact that one man really did kill an enemy with a longbow in the 20th century, and then went on to capture 42 more with nothing but a sword. If you have made it this far, thank you for watching. Stories like this deserve to be remembered. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss our next deep dive. Leave a comment telling us which military figure you would like us to cover next. And share this video with anyone who loves extraordinary history. Until next time.